It is time. I'll get started today and I'll be talking about salary negotiations and everything beyond just the money. So look forward to meeting you all and chatting with you all afterward. If you want to connect on here or on LinkedIn, please add me. Love to answer any other questions or have further discussions. I'm going to start off first with, energy. When you go into the salary negotiation, you're going to need energy, be positive, go into it as a victory. You already got to the offer. You should be excited and express that energy to the person giving it to you. So always start with the energy that you're confident that this is your role. You're the best person for the role. And when they do give you the offer, don't just accept it right away. You know, thank them for their time, thank them for the offer, but say that I need a day or two. Take time, give yourself leverage, give yourself time to continue to benchmark your value. And let me pause there. That's the first thing that I really want to touch on is benchmarking your value during this negotiation. And this is really important because this is how you're going to go into the next conversation after you got the original offer with data. And what do I mean by data? Glassdoor, industry reports, your professional network. A lot of you've been in the role before and you know what your peers made, you know what you were previously making. Another thing that's really important is your location. Doing a study on the location, what they usually get paid. Let's say you're a project manager, for example. Do a demographic search of project managers in your area. Understand what the top 3 companies in your industry are paying, and go into that meeting with those numbers, with that data to help you negotiate. Another thing is quantifying your impact. So again, this is a true negotiation where you're going into this conversation not only just, fighting for more base pay, but you're showing the impact that you're going to come in and help the company with. What I mean by impact is, go into it with examples of results that you've driven, revenue that you've saved or brought in, depending on the role, successful projects that equal money or time saved. Those things are really, really important. And when you go into this, have strong examples that you're comfortable with sharing that are natural and that you could, again, show tangible results. Let me pause there. And I want to say that when you're going through the salary negotiation, you have to be clear and confident. And I'm going to go into the comments and I'm going to tackle the first. So upcoming interviews. So when I think about upcoming interviews, that's again where quantifying your impact and doing research on the roles is crucial. I'm not familiar with what role or position you work now, but again, doing the due diligence, doing the research on what others are getting paid, what benefits the companies offer is key. Because it's not just going to be a conversation around your base salary. Another important piece is going to be, do they offer options or RSUs? And for anyone that's not sure what RSUs are, it stands for restricted stock units. And that's when a company gives you restricted stock units to participate, and they usually have a vesting period. And what I mean by a vesting period is when it has X amount of time to go into your E-Trade or whatever financial institution that you have. So, for example, I work for Meta right now, and they have a 4-year vestment period. And during that 4 years, how the vestment period works is quarterly. So for the 4 years, you get X amount of percentage of your stock quarterly for the 4 years. Now I worked at other companies like Zoom, for example, where there's a 1-year cliff. And what a 1-year cliff is that after 1 year, your stock starts to vest during a quarterly cycle. So to be clear, 12 months, you get 25% of your stock. Then the remaining 75% starts to get paid out quarterly. And the reason I bring this up is this is another avenue to negotiate. Because when I worked at another company, they had the 1-year cliff that I just explained, like at Zoom, but I was able to negotiate that down to 6 months. So instead of waiting 12 months, I was able to maneuver it down to 6, which was substantial because I start getting the stock payouts in half the time. Another thing is during your yearly reviews, you can negotiate the time and length that the yearly review is going to be. So if you feel that you're going into a role and maybe the pay range or the stock wasn't the most competitive at the time, you could negotiate a 6-month meetup to review all those things. And again, that's very crucial as well. Like cutting time from these reviews or these vesting periods are really important. Another thing is for options. Let's go into options. So options is when it's a pre-IPO company, they give you stock options at a strike price. And what a strike price is the price that you could buy those stocks from the company once they go public. And there's a few different ways that you can negotiate and navigate this conversation where you could change it to lowering the strike price, for example. Or another thing is you could negotiate that you're able to sell your options before they go public, because sometimes it could take a company many, many years to go public. Another thing that you could do is start to discuss what if the company gets acquired. If the company gets acquired, then what you can negotiate is, are all my options going to get vested? What's going to happen to the acquiring company? What's going to happen to the remainder of my stock? Those are all very important things to understand in your negotiation beyond just the base. And then that takes me into you have to figure out like what is important to you. I see some people in the comments, what about base salary? You have to figure out like, do you want to negotiate hard on the base salary, the sign-on bonus? Do you want to negotiate a performance bonus? Do you want to promote or negotiate remote work, paid time off, professional development funds? These are all things that are accessible to you to negotiate. And you frame those as a mutual benefit. So, for example, one thing that I like to share with my clients is negotiating a performance bonus. So you agree upon the base and you agree upon the stock or bonuses or whatever else, but then you say, hey, I'm really excited about this opportunity, but I would like to agree upon a list of 5 to 6 things performance-wise that we both agree upon that if I meet those goals, I get another, let's say $10,000, for example. And that's been a really successful method for me and my clients is building in performance bonuses because it's a win-win for the company that you're going into and then for yourself. And another thing is be ready for alternatives. So again, some companies will be more willing to negotiate with the base or more willing to give you more equity, but like understanding what the alternatives are and not getting too focused on one piece of the negotiation is key. And then lastly, before I jump into the questions and we make this a little more interactive, is get everything in writing. Because when you negotiate these things, if it's not in your offer letter, if it's not in writing, there could be a change in leadership, there could be a change in HR, there could be change in systems where you lose opportunities on these bonuses or negotiated terms. So please get everything in writing. And now I'm going to jump into the chat. I want to get the high end of the salary range for my next job. Okay, Trevor. So depending on what state or country you're in, they're going to give you a salary range. And with that, the common practice, I've been in HR and in recruiting for 15 years now, is whatever the range is, they usually go between the 65% to 85% of that range. So they don't like to go below 65% and they don't like to go to the top mark as well. So depending on if you see the salary range, then we would work together and like negotiating to get into that 90 to 95 to even 100% range. And that's when it comes with data, understanding the market, understanding the industry, understanding what they've paid, and doing that due diligence and research is really important. Morgan, our potential offer coming soon. I want to be prepared. Yeah, so a lot of this is understanding who the market is, understanding what company you're going into, understanding your geographic area is really key. And there's all this third-party research and information that's out there that could really guide you in this practice. But if you go into the conversation not knowing what you want to discuss or not having the value that you could bring into this position, really sets you back, because then you're getting in a conversation around just, I believe I'm worth this and you believe I'm worth this, instead of getting into the facts and the numbers. And then some people raise their hands. Vishal, let's hear your question.
Hi, Dave. I have a two-part question. So I've often worked with external recruiters, and before we even get to like interviewing or anything, there is already a salary range that's accepted. So by the time I get to the offer, there is not really any scope of negotiation, and because I've already discussed with the external recruiter, and that's why they presented me to the employer. So my first part of the question is, what do we do in that situation? Are we kind of stuck with what we agreed to with the external recruiter? And then, and this is in one of my current jobs, it's that I wanted to negotiate on the PTO, and this time it's the director of HR who said that the PTO is set in the company policy, X number of years you accrue at this rate, so that cannot be changed. So I felt that I was kind of stuck over there as well. So wanted to get your thoughts on both those things, how to handle those.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So how third-party agencies work, I'm going to go into deep detail for anyone that doesn't know, is they'll give you a salary range. Let's say it's $50 to $60 an hour, for example. But what a lot of people don't know is that you're now becoming an employee of the third-party agency, and they're contracting you out to the customer, whoever they're working with. Let's say they're working for Microsoft, for example. Now, the agency is actually, if they're paying you $60, they have to make money as well. So they're charging Microsoft, let's say $95 to $100 an hour. So even though they'll say, oh, the range is locked in at $50 to $60, there actually is wiggle room if you understand that you're just cutting into their margin and their profit. So there actually usually is still a few more dollars that you can get and an opportunity to negotiate. Is it a huge difference? No. Like, I can't lie to you and say, oh, you could get like $30 more an hour. But just kind of keep that in mind, is whatever number they're giving you, on the back end of that, they're making their profit margin as well, which is usually 100 to 110% of whatever they're paying you. So keep those numbers in mind. As for locked in PTO and company policy, I've seen it so many times where, let's say a company says they have 20 days of PTO and that's for all new employees. There's still room for negotiation, but that's when you need to focus on what's really important to you. Like, do you want to harshly negotiate the PTO? Or do you want to get creative and say, okay, I completely understand that's not an avenue we could go down, but Can I be remote, or can we do the performance bonus that I was mentioning earlier, or can I get a review quicker? Or if it is a contract role, like a 6-month contract and your goal is to be converted to full time, can we shorten that time? Can the review be at 3 months instead of 6 months? So there's always room to negotiate and have conversations and present them with all the information at once. Another thing is, like, are they going to provide money for your internet, for your cell phone? There's a lot of conversation around what your true total comp is, what the total comp offering is that they're giving you, and comparing those apples to apples. I hope that answers your question. If not, just jump back in. I'm going to move to Cynthia.
Hi, David. Thank you for taking. So I saw there's other people who have similar comments, but I wanted to make sure like I'm getting the max of my salary. And one of the pinpoints that I'm trying to understand is how do I argue my base pay versus RSU versus employee stock options? Like, what would you say would be a suggestion as part of the percentage that you should argue, like 50% of your base, 25 should go to stock and equity? Because I'm recently finding out about RSUs and trying to understand how do they work and how does that calculate into your total comp.
Yeah, so go. That's a great question. Go into a little more detail about what about RSUs are you really trying to figure out, and I'll try to help you with that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say that again.
So what exactly about RSUs are you still confused about? Because I could try to help you with that piece.
Yeah, well, I'm still on the job hunts because I'm just recently learning like the vesting period. What does that mean? Like, how does that translate into your take home salary? Does that, when you say that, you mentioned before, like you have to, for Meta, you vest like 25% of your income, or you receive a return. I'm assuming 25% of your stock. So does that mean that every quarter do you receive income into your account, or is it something that you have to sell your stocks? I'm just trying to get an understanding. How does this work?
Great question. So for numbers' sake, let's use a really easy number. Let's say that Meta gives you $100 in RSUs, okay? And that $100 vests over 4 years. Now at Meta, for year one, the $25, which is 1/4 of 100, will vest quarterly. So each quarter, you'll get 25% of the $25. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And then the remaining $75 will continue to vest over those 4 years. Now, when I say vest, what that means is after the first quarter, you get your 25, or after your first year, you get your $25, right?
Okay.
So that means it's now in your E-Trade or whatever stock trading platform you're using. Mm-hmm. And you could keep it, you could sell it, you could do whatever you want with it. An important thing to understand, though, is with stock is the tax implications. So if you sell your stock at less than a year, the tax is going to be around 40%. If you keep it for that 1 year, it's going to be around 20%. So it makes a substantial difference. But I don't want to go too far down the tax rabbit hole. But again, like once it vests, you now own it. Until it vests, the company still owns it.
Okay.
And every company is going to have a different strategy on that. But that's where the negotiation comes. So ultimately, your goal is to have it vest as quickly as possible. And that's one of the negotiation points. Like I was saying, a company I worked for in the past, they said every single one of their employees has vesting at 1 year. I was able to negotiate to 6 months. And that made a big difference because after 6 months, I was starting to get stock paid out to me where I could do whatever I want with it. Another thing to understand is when the company gives you that $100 in stock, that could go up or down in value. So you're not getting locked into $100. If the Meta stock, for example, goes up, your $100 continues to grow, which is another key thing. You're not getting locked into a number. But if the Meta stock goes down, that $100 will go down. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So,
no, it makes sense. Thanks.
Of course. So that's kind of like the very basics of how it works is until it vests, you don't own it. Once it vests, it's yours to do whatever you want with it, just like any other stock that you bought on your own. And another key difference is between options and RSUs. Options you have to buy back at the strike price. So you're giving your own money to buy that stock. Whereas RSUs, you don't have to give any of your money. Once it vests, you completely own whatever vested. And then if you have any other questions, just let me know. I'm going to move to Raj.
Thank you, Mr. David. Thanks for all the information. So I have a question about where to do such discussions. A little bit more context. Most of the job postings, they don't have information about the salary ranges or when the negotiations take place. And this recently affected in one of other two interviews. One of the recruiters, they initially described the base salary, but few others are preferring to do it after all other rounds are completed. So it's kind of wastes everyone time. If we don't like it, then it all goes to waste. So do you have any suggestion?
Sorry, I was having a hard time at hearing your question at the end. Can you repeat it back to me, please?
Yeah. So a context is most of the job postings don't have the salary ranges, and it kind of makes it difficult because few recruiters ask what we're expecting without giving the ranges at the beginning, or few do after completing all the rounds. Do you have any suggestion when is the best time to discuss it without going through all these rounds and stuff?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So really, it's a little tougher, but again, it goes back to doing the market research and understanding, what others in your role are getting paid in your area. So that's key. So what is your profession?
I'm a software engineer.
Okay. And then where are you located?
I'm located in India, but I'm in my past experience includes I'm working remotely for a Berlin company, a medical technology company.
Okay. So what I would suggest to you is like doing the research through third party like FYI Levels or Glassdoor or sites like that where other software engineers in your industry and your area working are sharing what they're getting offered. Levels FYI is a website I recommend to almost everyone, especially in the tech industry, because it's anonymous postings of what they're getting paid. So I would really start there and try to understand like what information can I gather through other parties to negotiate. Another thing is if I'm your recruiter and I say, hey, what would you like for this role? A way to spin it back is like, hey, thank you so much for asking that, salary is a priority of mine, but I'm really focused on landing at the right opportunity, landing with the right tech. But I'd love to hear, do you have a range or what has been the pay historically at your company, and just kind of like send it back to them and see what they say or see what they share. So trying to get them to talk more or like move the conversation back to them is key, instead of like sharing everything all at once where you're giving way too high of a value or too low of a value. And I know like it's a tough situation, but that's really where the research and due diligence comes into play. But like a safe way I always recommend to others is bring the question back to them in a respectful way. Does that help?
Yes, sure.
Cool. I hope I'm pronouncing this Veruska. Hopefully.
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you. I had a quick question. Well, two questions. One, how do you suggest going about tailoring negotiation strategies for different roles in tech? So, for example, a role in product versus like an adjacent role within the same company or, a similar tier company. That was the first question. The second one, I know sometimes the whole timing can play a role and you can leverage competing offers, but if you don't have any competing offers, things are slow. how do you kind of stall for time but still negotiate appropriately? Any thoughts around that whole topic? I know that gets thrown around a lot, but just with the slow and tough market, leveraging competing offers is, in my opinion, a little tough.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if you happen to have competing offers, that's great because then you could just leverage the two against each other. But when you don't have that offer or a competing offer, that's when you have to really lean on the value you're going to bring and being able to come with them with data of, again, like time saved, money brought in, and just having, like, I usually say like 2 to 3 strong examples of how you're going to come into that role and show immediate value. And really, it's like a data-driven conversation where you're fighting for what you know you're worth. And you could also say, hey, I am actively interviewing. I'm in process with others. You don't have to like go too strong down that path and say, hey, I have another offer in hand if that's not the case. But let them know this is a priority of mine, but I am actively interviewing and I know my value is X and this is why my value is X and this is what I'm looking for in my next move. Does that answer your question?
It does. That's helpful. Thank you. And then a real quick, what do you suggest when it comes to, I know you touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but what would you say, even experienced tech professionals, some common negotiation mistakes that you've seen people make? I know you said don't be the first one ideally to put in a number out there. What are some of the other ones that people usually make that can be avoided? I figured that might be helpful for us.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is just hyper focused on base. Like they offered me this base, I want to get $5,000 to $10,000 more, whatever the number is, and just like being really, really focused on that and not seeing the big picture. And what I mean by the big picture is like, is your new insurance more expensive? Is the deductible for the insurance much higher? Do you have 12 less PTO days? Did you go from equity to no equity? Are you going from remote to in office 5 days a week? So like really understanding like that's why if you've noticed they moved from comp internally to now they call it total comp. And I think that's a really interesting, change in marketing for these companies is it truly is total comp. Like you have to understand like every single dollar and benefit that you're getting from your current company versus what the new company is offering. Because even if they are offering more base, let's say for a salesperson, for example, what percentage of the salespeople on that team are hitting their quota? Or if it's a marketing person, like what's the average workload? Are you working 50, 60 hours versus 40 hours? Are you working 12 projects versus 6 projects? Like, is the team really stretched out? Really understanding like the total vision, the total comp, and the value of all those things and what's most important to you, which is different for everyone, is something that I say is a huge mistake people make because they just chase the dollars and go into situations that they really don't enjoy, or like the old saying, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Really understanding like the full comp is another thing. And another mistake that sometimes is made, and this is kind of different than what I was saying at the beginning, but I think the key difference is when you're at the final step and you're getting that offer and you're currently employed somewhere. So the big difference is you're employed at Meta, for example, and you're getting an offer from TikTok versus unemployed looking for an active job. So you're employed, you're getting another offer. It is sometimes in your benefit to share exactly what you're making, what bonuses and stock you have coming up, because with those companies, you could share it to the recruiter and their total comp team, and they'll try to match that. So I know that's a little different than what I was saying before, but the key difference is if you are employed and you're at the final step and this is the company and opportunity you want, there are situations where it does make sense to show your total comp, especially if they're not offering you where you're at and you feel that there's room for growth. And I know that's a little confusing, but it's all about positioning. And especially if you have a job you have a little more power to negotiate and you could take that bigger risk.
Got it. Very helpful. Thank you so much.
Of course. Sebastian? All right. Well,
Oh, there we go. Do you hear me?
yes.
Awesome. Okay. I was just wondering. Just had an interview a few days ago, and I was witness of the question, how much do you want to pay me, right? So I really didn't want to either undersell or oversell myself. So how would I like politically, for lack of a better word, or like neutrally, like not say that amount? Because as you were saying, you say the first amount and it's essentially a big disadvantage. So what would you say, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, so how I'd position it is, if you really want to avoid the question, I would say, hey, thank you so much for asking that, but I'm really excited about this opportunity and I look forward to meeting more of the team. But I'm going to be making my decision not solely based on the salary, but I want to make sure I'm joining the right culture, I'm joining the right company, and I'm joining somewhere that I can meet my aspirations and goals professionally. And that kind of moves it back to them. And you could also do the add-on, like, with that being said, I assume you have a range for this role. Is that something that you could share? And again, it's just kind of positioning it back to them versus you doing all the legwork and showing your cards essentially. Just position back to them in a very professional way. You're excited. You're looking for more than just the money. You want to be in the right fit, that you could be somewhere for the next 5+ years, and see what they say or see how they position that back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I just want to let you know that the first few words of your response, I didn't catch them, but I appreciate the whole response. If you would mind repeating.
Oh, of course. So just say, hey, thank you for asking, but ultimately in this new job, I'm not making the decision solely on the salary. I want to make sure that I'm joining the right culture, the right team, and somewhere that I could grow and bring a lot of value in the next 5+ years. With that being said, I'm sure that you have a range for this role. Is that something that you're comfortable sharing during this stage, or something along those lines?
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Cool. How about Austin?
Hi, David. Okay, so my question is much related to what you've been saying, but the twist here is for entry level roles, right? For entry level roles, because I know you said you should do your market research to know what the values of the market. So, but for entry level role, like there was a particular job I applied for, and they gave a range of $70,000 to $120,000 annually, and it's an entry level product management role. But I was really confused as to where I lay in that range, because although the although I could say this is the skill I have, because I'm just starting out in product management. I just finished a training in product management. So even though I can say this is the skill I have so far, I can't really place my market value yet because I don't necessarily have an experience. It's a graduate rotation program, right? And they're giving the range of 70 to 120K. So I couldn't really place where I lay in that range while making the application. So how do you really approach such values without overselling or underselling, basically?
Yeah, so when they give you the range, something to keep in mind is 99% of the times they're not going to give you the bottom of the range or the top of the range. And HR standards is 75 to 85% of that range. So that's the bucket that they're likely going to want to make an offer in. So for entry level or like new to career, it is harder to negotiate that. But with that knowledge, understanding likely the max they're going to offer, the goal would be positioning your value to that number. So let's say the goal for this role, to be honest, would probably be between 100 and 110,000 for the range you gave me. That's where they're comfortable making that higher. So with that knowledge in hand, you're going to have to position yourself with value to get to that 110. And understanding like realistically what they can offer, because another candidate mistake they make is every candidate sees a range for the most part and they want to be at 120. They're like, oh, 70 to 120. I think I should be at 120. But they don't have really the data or information to back that up. And also it's not a comfortable space or range that they often will go in. So understanding like what's realistic in the role and realistically where they're going to start versus where they're going to finish is key. So targeting the range for, let's say for this role 110, I would then collect data and understand other people on their team, you know, what are they doing? What are they bringing in? Trying to find out from other like new career people, what are the responsibilities? What value do they bring to the team? And then spinning back that information to the employer and showing them that you are, even though you are new to career, you're a top level new to career individual. And that's who you're competing against versus everyone else in the company. I wouldn't focus on being new to career because your whole competition is all new career people. The strategy would be bringing in the most value and the biggest offer within that rank. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Cool.
Thank you.
Of course. Let's go to Jorge.
Hey, thank you. So my question is more around the internal promotion. So how would you position yourself, or what advice would you give to negotiate perhaps what they offer you during that promotion, or if not the base, negotiate the bonus? I know you touched on it a little bit to really deliver on the value, but just kind of want to hear your thoughts on internal.
Yeah, so internal is a really good spot because that's when you could really show your impact to the business. So what I would recommend to you, Jorge, is having like the best 2 to 3 projects or whatever your field of specialty is, or biggest impacts to the business, and putting a value to that. And another thing is, I don't know if this is the case or not the case, but oftentimes if you work for a bigger company, especially, sometimes they'll post similar jobs to what you're getting promoted into. And you could see the ranges or figure out what those individuals got paid, because oftentimes the unfortunate truth is internal employees usually get between 4 to 8% raise, where external employees usually get 20 to 25%, which isn't great, but it also gives you an advantage because you could position your value and the impact that you've made into more dollars. So say, hey, I completely understand that the traditional raise here is 7%. I'll just make up a number. But I think that a more appropriate number will be 14%. And these are the 3 reasons why. Does that make sense? I could go into deeper detail, but.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe if I can just clarify, like, how would you, I mean, I guess you can't tell me anything, say it, but like, if you had to pick one or the other, like, how would you even bring it up? I know you said bring some of the projects, but I don't know if you had like a cheat sheet for something like this.
Yeah. So how often do you have one-on-ones with your manager?
Pretty often. We have one every week. So the value and the recognition's there. I'm just curious when the time comes, you know, how do I approach, you know, if this is like a lowball offer, or if I could even negotiate a larger bonus.
Yeah. So I think the one-on-ones, the reason I asked that is that's an opportunity for you to start slowly building your case. Showing what you're accomplishing. Of course, they're your managers, so they're seeing, but like emphasizing the impact that project had, emphasizing your work, showing that you're motivated to move up in the company. So those are all like soft things that you could start to do during your one-on-one. So when you get to the formal conversation, your manager already understands like what you enjoy doing, what you're excited about, where you want to be within the company. And then that's when you could spin it back into, again, like, hey, I'm completely excited about this new opportunity, new role. This is what I think the fair market value is for this role. And this is because I'm bringing the value. And we've talked about this often in our one-on-ones, and just kind of building that narrative and building that story is key when you come to these internal promotions and raises. For example, my last company, I wanted to become a principal in my role. And I often would bring up during my one-on-ones, like, what do I need to accomplish? What do you expect for me to make it to the next step? And like building that story and like getting those small wins and those small accomplishments was something that I talked about when we did get to negotiations in my yearly review.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Ami?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so hi David. So I actually got a question regarding the salary negotiation. So let's say that you are being interviewed at a ex company, right? And then you mentioned that we need to collect some data, do some research, and one thing that actually came to my mind is like try to actually talk to current employees and everything. And when I actually get to the call, for instance, I actually talked to somebody and we decided to actually have a coffee chat or something like that. Like, how do I bring up the question? Like, how much are you earning? Like, what can be a good strategy to actually, talk about that, ask about the questions, like how much the person is actually earning to, try to actually analyze how much I can actually earn as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think having a natural conversation, understanding, what they enjoy about the role, what they've been learning, the projects they've been working on. So just kind of like learning more about the role, what it entails, and then like naturally moving into like, are you happy with the benefits? Are you happy with the compensation? Just kind of like slowly building into that, into a natural conversation, and making it a way where they're comfortable sharing that information, or they're comfortable like opening up a little more, I think would be my best advice. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Cool. Well, we only have a few more minutes. Does anyone have any other? Okay, here we go. Veriska?
Yeah, you're fine. I just had a quick question. How or what would be the best way to contact you regarding services and whatnot? I figured that might be a good last 5-minute question.
Yeah, so you could find my Leland profile. I'll also email everyone afterward and just give my information and thank everyone for being here. And when you send me a message, like, we could really go into deeper detail. Like, tell me about your title, your position, exactly what you're looking for. And what my services would entail is like doing the research for you. So I know I mentioned a lot about like understanding the market, understanding what others are getting paid. I have access to a lot of that because of like third-party resources that I have and pay for. So I have a lot of that information already for you, and then we could brainstorm and partner together on these negotiations. And that's what I do with my clients is like, not only will we role play interviews, but we role play negotiations. And that's where my 15 years of recruiting comes into hand, because we could be really honest with each other. I'll tell you like what works, what doesn't work, in a much more intimate forum. And with this, it was kind of like, I just wanted to really go over the basics and answer as many questions as possible, which I happy I did. But really, like, having a customized approach would be different for everyone in this group, and really understanding what's most important to you. And then one more question, Priscilla.
Hi, yes, I put mine in the chat very quickly. How do you position yourself if you're trying to find another job that's a little bit more challenging that you haven't done, but they're trying to give you like a pay cut because they're having to onboard you and train you, but either way you're going to get onboarded?
Yeah. So can you give me a little more detail?
So one of the last roles that I previously had, I applied for the role because the recruiter reached out to me. I take on the role, I do it, but as I'm interviewing, like I already took the job, but just for other people that might go through the experience, I was wanting to learn more, and they were justifying like not paying me at a higher pay because they were gonna have to train me. But either way, they're gonna have to train you. So how do you justify taking a pay cut if they're gonna train you?
Yeah, I mean that's something I've actually never heard before. Because like you said, I don't really agree with the statement. Oh, well, we're giving you less money because we're going to be training you. But any company has to train and onboard an employee, even if they've been doing it 25 plus years, because you have to learn their systems, their procedures, their strategy. Um, so with that being said, like you said, if you already didn't take the job and we're working together, I would try to understand, like, okay, if the first year I'm getting this pay cut because of training, which I think isn't the greatest anyway, does that mean year two, I'm automatically going to be at the appropriate pay range now because the training's over? That was a one time investment. So then I would say my salary should revert back to the salary it should be without the quote unquote cost of the training. Or after 6 months or however long the training is, let's say it's 3 months, shouldn't my salary then revert back? That would kind of be my thought process. I wish I could be of more help, but I've never heard that before. But my thinking is if there's a one-time cost of training, that your salary should go back to whatever it should be without the cost of the training. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I also thought it was a weird approach, but I had that happen to me, so that's why I figured I would ask.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that situation, like it's a great thing that you bring up to the group. That's when I go back to get everything in writing. So we agree upon, if you're like, okay, I really think I should be paid less because of the training, fine. But we need to get to a point where you're making the appropriate amount of money, and that's negotiated and written down in the contract, because a year from now, if you do a yearly review, it won't be fair, because let's say you get a 2 to 5% raise, whatever the raise is, you're already behind the 8 ball because you already took a lower cost opportunity because of the training, and you're continuously going to be behind. So I think there has to be some kind of language or bonus. Even I would consider like negotiating again, like, hey, if I do this training and I'm successful, there should be a bonus of the training, like of $1,000 or whatever the number is, and getting that built into the contract so you could recoup some of your money.
I see. Okay, I think that's a good point of view. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you everyone so much. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everyone's questions, but please send me an individual message afterward or whenever you have a chance, and I'll get to as many questions as possible. And if you want to meet up, I think there's like a free call that we could do or whatever it is, and we could talk deeper about like your exact negotiation and really what you're looking for. But I would love to work with anyone interested and go deeper into it, because it's a very broad conversation. I'm going to start doing this salary negotiation conversation once a month and really like focus on more Q&A and more questions, because there's been a lot of questions, a lot of unique questions, and I don't think it could all be settled in this one call. So I hope you all join again. But thank you so much.